Mr. President, in February of this year, Justice Scalia passed away. It's an enormous loss to the nation. But in the hours and the days following that, Republicans in the Senate had opportunity to be able to talk about their constitutional responsibility, that responsibility of advice and consent. Supreme Court justices don't show up to the Supreme Court because the president just nominates them. The Constitution, Article 2, Section 2, lays out a 50-50 proposition. The president has the first 50%. He narrows down his list, he nominates. The Senate then has the second 50%. They have what's the power of what's called advice and consent. First half of that is when? Is this the right time to do a nominee? And many nominees historically, both ambassadors, justices, cabinet officers, the Senate has had a long delay to be able to say, no, this is not the right time. So the first question is this the right time? Second question is this the right person? That's the process of advice and consent, and it has been for 200 years. So what's happened since February? Well, since February, Republicans have been very consistent, myself included, to say this is not the time to have a Supreme Court justice go through the nomination process. In the hours after Justice Scalia passed away, we made it very clear so that any nominee that went through the process, regardless of who they were, would know in advance you will not move to a hearing because it's not the right time. Of our two-part test, is this the right time? Is this the right person? The first part is not complete. It's not the right time. So this nominee will not move at all throughout this entire year, and everyone knew that in advance. So I understand that Republicans have talked about the first test on that, the priority of is this the right time? Democrats have focused on this right person. They focused on Judge Garland as being the nominee, and they want to be able to raise up and be able to talk about his profile. And I get the politics of that, but it's just the politics of it. And you expect that banter back and forth in the politics, though this is a settled issue among Republicans. He will not move through the nomination process. But we hit a new low today on this floor, Mr. President, and I had to come and address it. Because today, this moved from a conversation about is this the right time and is this the right person to drawing in the memory of 168 lives that were lost in Oklahoma City 21 years ago today. April the 19th, 1995, the worst act of terrorism at that time on American soil, carried out by another American, killing 168 people at the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. A Ryder truck loaded with fertilizer and diesel pulled up to the front, blew it up, killing 168. Timothy McVeigh, who had carried that out, got into his Ford and drove north to leave out of the state. 19 minutes later, Trooper Charlie Hanger, just doing his job, saw a vehicle on I-35 without a license plate on it, pulled him over, found out that he also had a weapon on him, and put him in jail and to be able to hold him. Charlie Hanger doing his job, that trooper actually arrested the person who had killed 168 people just 90 minutes before, not knowing it. Local law enforcement, individuals quickly went through the debris trying to find individuals to save and evidence to be able to identify who this is. And within a few hours, they found the axle of that Ryder truck. They called the rental company on it. They identified, they did a composite sketch and figured out within hours who this might be, a guy named Timothy McVeigh. Running the search on him, they figured out he was already in jail. He had been picked up by Trooper Charlie Hanger. And before he was released, because he was in the process of being released, they were able to hold him and be able to unwind a horrific crime. It's incredible local law enforcement. It's an incredible task that happened. Within 40 hours of that event occurring, a gentleman named Merrick Garland had come from D.C., where he worked in the Department of Justice, to Oklahoma City to help on the federal side of the prosecution, along with thousands of other people from around the country. Our state and our city was overwhelmed with the compassion of people around the country as we saw what happened. And Merrick Garland was one of those. We are grateful as a community for what he did in the prosecution of Timothy McVeigh, of what he did against Terry Nichols, of what he did against Michael Fortier. We are grateful for his work there. But today, on this floor of this Senate, the implication was laid out twofold. One is, since Judge Garland served the country and did that, he deserves something else. I've never met Judge Garland. I'll meet him next week and, quite frankly, look him in the face and say thank you for your service to Oklahoma. And to make it clear again, the same position we've been in before he ever started the process, there'll be no nomination this year. He does deserve our gratitude. He doesn't deserve a lifetime appointment onto the bench because of his faithful service to our country and our community, as is being alluded to. The politics of it really, really deeply struck me as an Oklahoman, that for some reason today of all days, the tragedy that happened of 168 people and their death 21 years ago suddenly became paraded out here as a political prop. One of the senators even standing with a picture of a dead child behind him, like she is a prop. This child is not a prop for politics. She has a name. She was identified as a toddler. She was 1 year and 1 day old. She was killed in the Murrah building the day after her 1-year birthday. She's not some random toddler. Her name is Bailey. And she is not to be used as a prop for politics in the Supreme Court nomination process. It is absolutely fair game to talk about the record of Judge Garland and what he has done. We are grateful as Oklahomans for his service to our state and to our nation to put away those awful terrorists. But to use a child that was killed in the Murrah building bombing as a prop so far exceeds the line that I had to come and speak about it and say I'm absolutely offended, and I should be. 21 years ago today, we remember. It is the statement that comes up to Oklahomans over and over again. We remember. We remember the victims. We remember the survivors. We remember the first responders. We remember the thousands of people who came from across the country to help us. We remember. And we will continue to remember. But don't do politics with the life and death of children and adults in Oklahoma City. Let's keep this where it should be. We can have the debate about process. Do not draw this in. With that, Mr. President, I yield back.